Okay, and the next question is really similar. You've been given an expression 2r squared minus 4r. What's the value of the expression when r is equal to negative 2? So the only change this time is that the unknown is, the variable, sorry, is a negative number. I've given you r as negative 2 instead of a positive number. So let's make a start. I have 2r squared minus 4r. It's the same thing. I'm squaring the r, then multiplying by 2, and then I'm subtracting 4 lots of r. So 2 lots of r squared. Well, r is negative 2, and I'm squaring that, okay? And then I'm subtracting 4 multiplied by, and what am I multiplying by? Negative 2. So I'm subtracting 4 multiplied by negative 2. Now, 2 lots of negative 2 squared is 4. So that's 2 lots of 4, which is 8. And then I'm subtracting, what am I subtracting? 4 lots of negative 2. 4 lots of negative 2 is negative 8. And subtracting a negative is the same as adding. So that's the same or equivalent to adding a positive. So that gives me 8 plus 8, which is 16. So the correct answer is 16, which is option C. Now, if you chose A, negative 34, as the correct answer, what you have done here is you've calculated this first term correct, and then you subtracted 42 instead of subtracting 4 lots of r. If you chose B here, then you really made a mistake with the fact that subtracting a negative is equivalent to a positive, so you have to be very, very careful with this one here. And you made a mistake here as well when you multiplied by a negative. And if you chose D, you subtracted the 8 only instead of adding it. So you didn't make a mistake with this negative here, but you made a mistake with the negative numbers, with subtracting the negative. So again, the few mistakes with negatives, so you have to be really careful. Squaring a negative gives us a positive answer because negative times negative is positive, so end up with 4. Multiplying a positive by a negative gives us a negative answer, and then subtracting a negative gives us a positive answer. So we have to be really careful with the rules for negative numbers. Okay, and the next question here says the equation f equals 3r squared plus 3 is used to find values in the table below. What is the value covered by the stars? You've been given different values for r, you've been given a couple of values for f, and you needed to find this value here. This is no different from substitution, the previous 2 questions that we have done. We want to find f. We have an equation that tells us the relationship between f and r, so we need to use that. So f, I'm actually going to write here, f equals 3r squared plus 3. I need to find f, I don't know what it is, but I know it's 3 lots of r squared. R is 3. R is 3 in this table, so that's 3 squared plus 3. Now 3 multiplied by 3 squared is 9. And then I'm adding 3. Remember, I'm following the order of operations here. I did the squaring first, now I'm going to do the multiplication, so that gives me 27, add 3, and the answer therefore is 30. So if I look at the options here, A was 30, so A is the correct answer. Why was it not B? If you chose B, what you have done, you've substituted 4 instead of 3 into here, and you have doubled instead of squaring, so you have to be really, really careful again with the squaring, so you make sure you're squaring and not doubling. If you chose 51, you would have substituted 4 by mistake instead of the 3, so you have to understand that this star here, f when r is 3, and if you chose D as your answer, and there were a few of you who have done that, some of you, what you've done is you looked at the difference here, how to get from the first to the second number in the table, and we were adding 9, so we've added 9 here. Some of you just added another 9. If you add 9, it gives you 24, and that is wrong. You cannot do this because this is not a linear sequence, it's a quadratic one. We've got squared, so this does not work, so make sure you are not just looking for the sequence. Also, you cannot just decide that, okay, I'm going to add 9 every time just based on one difference. You should have had more values to make sure that it's consistent, that it's happening every time. But regardless, this is not a linear sequence, it's a quadratic one, so you cannot look at the difference between the first and the second numbers to find the third number. Okay, and this question here, what signs go in the brackets to factorize this expression correctly? So you have an expression here, it's a quadratic expression. We know that it's a quadratic expression because of the x squared, because the highest power here is a square, so it's a quadratic expression. So the first part, or at least the numbers, have already been given to you, so you know that you're going to be using a 4 and a 3, because 4 times 3 will give us the 12. But what do we do when we factorize quadratics? We need two numbers that multiply to give us negative 12, and they should add to give us the coefficient of x, so they should give us here a negative 1 overall. Okay, so you already have the 4 and the 3. To get negative 12 means either I need negative 4 multiplied by a positive 3, or a negative 3 multiplied by a positive 4. Okay, so which one of these is it going to go to be? Because this will give us the negative 12, this will also give us the negative 12. But if I add them, I need an overall of negative x. If I add negative 3 plus 4, it gives me an overall of a positive 1. And if I add negative 4 plus 3, that gives me an overall of negative 1. So that's the one I'm looking for. I need to have a negative for the 4 and positive in front of the 3. So if I look at the options here, I need to have option B is the correct answer. So in this one, the student, or if you chose it, you would have swapped the signs or put them the wrong way around. If you chose C, it tells me that you have really ignored the fact that there's a negative sign here for the constant. You cannot get a negative 12 if both of these are positive. And if you chose this one, probably because you made a mistake with the negative sign, believing that two negatives multiplied together will give us a negative, and they do not. It has to be a negative times a positive to give us that negative constant, negative 12. And I want you to always remember that with questions like this, when you're factorizing quadratics, it's a really good idea to expand the double brackets after you finish the factorization to see whether you get the original expression. If you do, then you probably factorized it correctly. So just something to pay attention to. Now, the last question that I want to go through today is which of the following answers shows a correct factorization of the expression below. And you've been given an expression 3x squared minus 48. Now, the first thing I would think of when I see an expression like this, what do I have? I have a quadratic, we have a square term here. I have minus, so that's difference, that's a square number. I have a difference, but this one, the 48, is not a square number, so I don't really have the difference of two squares at the moment, because I've got a square term minus not a square number. Okay, so it's not the difference of two squares at the moment. So if I look at this and I can start factorizing it, what do I have common between these two terms? I have a 3 that is common between. The highest common factor of 3x squared and 48 is 3. So I can take 3 outside the brackets. I can open the brackets. 3 multiplied by what gives me 3x squared? Well, it's 3 multiplied by x squared, and 3 multiplied by what will give me negative 48. 3 multiplied by negative 16 will give me negative 48. So I factorized it, and if I look here, I've got that as my first option, so it could be A, I factorized it, but did I fully factorize it or not yet? I need to look at this really carefully. I've got 3, it's multiplied by x squared minus 16. Again, let's check what is this x squared minus 16. I have a square term, so I have a square. I have a subtraction sign, so I've got minus, so that's the difference. And 16 is a square number, so I have a square and I've got I'm subtracting another square, so that is the difference of two squares. So I can do something with this x squared minus 16. I'm going to write this down. What can I do with this? Well, I can open two brackets. To get x squared, I need to multiply x times x to get x squared, and I want to get minus 16. or negative 16, sorry, so I need to multiply 4 by 4, and one of them needs to be positive, one of them needs to be negative. What happens here is x multiplied by x gives me the x squared, negative 4 multiplied by x, positive 4 multiplied by this x will give me a 0 pair, and I end up with the negative 16. So I've factorized this bracket even more. So my final answer is 3 brackets x minus 4 brackets x plus 4, or 3x plus 4 and x minus 4. It really doesn't matter which way we write it down, which bracket we have first, the positive or the negative, because multiplication is commutative, so it will not make a difference. Okay, so now looking at the options that we have, it's definitely not A, because even though it's correct, it's equivalent, it is not fully factorized, so it's not A, it's not fully factorized. If we look at this one here, it looks similar, but we've got negative 4 and negative 4, so the signs are wrong. This will end up giving me a negative 8x for this fraction here, so for this bracket here, so that is wrong. The signs are different, are wrong. And here, what the student, if you picked it up, what you would have done here is you have definitely halved the 16. So when we had a 16, instead of looking at the square root of it, you looked at halving it, so that is wrong, and therefore this is the correct answer, and it looks like the first one that we have done. Okay, so it's the correct answer. So I really need you to pay attention to this. We've had a question like this before last week, and some of you, majority of you, did it wrong the first time. We still have quite a bit of you who are doing this question wrong, so we need to make sure that by next time when I give you this quiz that we are getting this correctly. If you've got any questions about this or about any of the other questions that I went through, or any question that was on the quiz but I didn't necessarily go through, it was a long quiz, 34 questions, please email me and I will get back to you and I'll give you a bit of feedback about that particular question. I hope you found this helpful. Thank you.